for the next section, I will be introducing Luke on stage, and he'll be talking about the work that the Post-Quantum Telco Network Task Force has been doing, be talking about what we've recently published, and also a little bit about the plans for next steps.
Very good. Thank you, Laurie. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, my name is Luke Ibbotson. I'm with Vodafone Research and Development, but it's my pleasure to be the co-chair for the PQTN Task Force. I thought I was going to be describing myself as a filling in the sandwich, but I think it's more half-time entertainment. I'm looking, where's Mike gone? Because I don't know how the Mets and the Phillies are doing, but I know there's a certain degree of anxiety before about the World Series playoffs. So, as Laurie said, I wanted to say a few words about the fantastic work that the task force has been undertaken over the past 2 years since we started it actually here in Las Vegas in, what would that be, 2022, I guess. So I think we've already spoken about some of the motivation about why we formed this task force, given the level of threat that I think has been very well articulated by the previous speakers, particularly the fact that we don't need to wait for a quantum computer to be available before we need to be cognizant of the threat. I think from a telco perspective, we're also very well aware of how special we are in terms of the complexity we manage. Multiple generations of technology, multiple suppliers, a lot of dependencies across a wide range of systems, both from a business and a technology perspective. And the task force was really set up to provide some very, very practical, grounded guidance for all of the members of the community that were brought with us on this. Yes, it includes network operators, as you'll see in a moment, but it also includes all of the technology providers and quite a large number of regulators and government organizations as well, all of whom want to see the ecosystem working together to solve this. So we've made fantastic progress over the past couple of years. This is a snapshot of where we are in terms of membership. We're proud to have more than 60 companies actively participating in this, taken from technology providers, network operators, regulators, and governments. We are, and I'll say a few words at the end about how you can join this organization, but we are today working very hard to figure out the next phase of the work. So now it actually would be a very, very good time to join. I'll come back to this point in a little while. So I think we've already started to talk about some of this. This is trying to frame from a task force perspective where we see some of the very practical actions that we all need to be taking as operators, as technology providers, so people who form the supply chain for the industry. I think Daphne spoke at length and very articulately about the need to build awareness at multiple levels. But we need to start implementing this into public key infrastructure. We need to be testing this, so we need to be setting up lab environments that allows us to measure things like, we've asked for crypto agility within a security gateway. How do we test that and make sure that actually we do have some agility there? We need to also capture some of the synergies. So much of the action actually, it looks very similar to any other large-scale IT transformation program, and it is to a large extent. These are very complex. So if we look for the synergies with adjacent transformation programs, such as the way that we manage PKI, for example, you will find that there are synergies that can help expedite and possibly even make cheaper the transition to PQC for a telco. So I think the more joined up we are as organizations in terms of our procurement, and in terms of awareness of where we are already unpacking some things that could actually help in the movement towards post-quantum, that really helps. And of course, we need to be building a cryptographic inventory because we don't know where this stuff is half the time. We do need to have a higher level of automation, but I do resonate as well with the points made regarding the need to keep some human oversight, because we do have systems that, for good reason, we don't tend to touch. The servers running in dark cupboards that we acquired from some enterprise 10 years ago to run a back-end service for a business customer. I don't know what level of vulnerability might be present there, but I do know that the weakest link is where we're going to get caught on this. So I think we need to have defense in depth. Some of the challenges, we do need to see close adherence to standards. I think if we start to get too dazzled by the bewildering array of proprietary and semi-proprietary solutions that are starting to be pitched into the telco community on the back of the great work done by NIST. I think there's a lot of awareness now has been raised about the fact that quantum computers are real, they're coming. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, which is good from one perspective. On the other side, it's open season for people proposing proprietary solutions. We can't digest those as telecommunication operators or the industry, so we need to make sure that we are sticking to interoperable standards that we can deploy at scale. Supply chain I mentioned a moment ago, we've got very, very complex supply chains. We need to make sure that the products that are being procured by operators incorporate the right level of cryptographic protection in terms of their adoption of PQC, but also building in the agility of recognizing, as we've said a few times, this is a rapidly evolving space. Processor and memory requirements. So you'll see in a moment one of the use case families that we're considering within the PQTN task force is IoT. It's something we need to get a lot more detailed about. We're seeing that there are some very, very specific and quite challenging barriers to overcome in terms of adoption of PQC when we start to consider the vast array of use cases in IoT, and also the constraints of operating end devices that have got very limited battery, very limited processing power, need to be low cost. And some of the algorithms are quite heavy when it comes to a device of that scale. I think we need to solve this. And finally, we're already haven't got enough time. We should have started this a couple of years ago. That's the realization that I think many of us are coming to. So make sure that we start to plan in good time. So you'll see this guidance reflected through the deliverables that the task force has published to date. The most recent of which I'm very pleased to say was published last Friday. This is an update of a document that we first published a few months ago, looking at a number of very, very specific telco use cases. So some of these, the ones in the, no, that's the wrong way. The ones in the light blue up at the top, these are more internally facing things that we need to get right as network operators. The ones at the bottom are more tilted towards customer facing services, and I think we need to be solving for all of these. So what you'll see in the document is quite a detailed use case by use case analysis of the context, where the data is, and more recently the migration strategy and the dependencies. So the place that we've doubled down on in this most recent deliverable is on this: how do you actually plan a cost-effective and comprehensive migration towards a state of quantum safety for each of the individual use cases? What are the dependencies? How do we drive the standards organizations to make sure that not only is NIST done its great work, but also those standards are folded into all of the downstream standards organizations and then into the product roadmaps of our technology suppliers. So the QR code is there. You can download that document, go and enjoy it. It's fantastic reading. We have got an executive summary as well, so you can have a high-level skim if you're a manager. You don't want to get into the detail. I'm not a manager, I'm an engineer. This is just an example of one of the Gantt charts you'll find in the document. So every single use case has got one of these Gantt charts, and it starts just to list out for that particular use cases what standards are involved, how does it relate to some of the guidance that's been published by governments, what does that mean for vendors in terms of the standards and the open source code that they need to be considering. This particular example is for cloud infrastructure, which, as Michaela said, is, I think, easily classes as a critical piece of infrastructure. And you can see that there's multiple dependencies, all of which start with getting the standards right, but actually that's not job done. There's a heap of work that we need to do for each of these use cases. So you will find this in the document. It's explained in a lot of detail for every single one of these use cases. It's a living beast, though, so we're not claiming it to be 100% comprehensive. And in fact, one of the wonderful things about that community of people in the task force is that we're able to continue to iterate these documents to make sure that if we spot things that are missing, we add, we enrich, we continue to roll this. So these are very much, will always be a work in progress, but the snapshot is there on the website. The other thing that we published alongside the latest guidance is this thing that Zig referred to, and we will attempt to keep this up to date as well. So we haven't come across any other organization that is collating together the guidance that's been published by government in terms of what they would expect to see by when regarding the migration to PQC. So I think this is a very useful reference guide for anybody wanting to take a broader look at what's happening across the world in terms of the momentum from governments that's building around the need to move here. This is not something nerdy and archaic that people need to get their arms around. Actually, I was reflecting on one of the speakers saying, I think it was Gary actually, I've got to mention Gary as well. Do we get like a bingo thing every time we say He said people running for the door every time you mention quantum. It's the opposite in a lot of my conversation. I think Laurie's had this as well. Actually, we entice people in because they think it's going to be about, good, sexy quantum compute stuff. And actually, we then do bait and switch and said, actually, no, this is about cryptography. The quantum computer guys are over there, but actually we're talking. So that's when they tend to run for the door. So we've got to keep people engaged. I think having this very frank and very candid guidance from all of the different governments is an extremely useful reference point for people facing those internal conversations as well in terms of mobilizing the right resources to allow us to do this migration in the right time frame. Of course, the report doesn't stand alone. It's the latest in a long series of fantastic publications that we've managed to produce over the past 2 years. Again, I mean, if Laurie were on the stage, instead of having done the leadership thing of delegating it to a vice chair to do this presentation, she would say, this is the power of the community, and it's the power of the collaboration that we have and the partnership and the trust between the people producing these deliverables. We actually have quite a good time doing them. It's we're a friendly group. We're not too straight-laced about this. I think we tend to make it as engaging as possible because we know people are volunteering effort collectively to make these things happen, and we're hugely grateful for that. So in terms of next steps, we're currently kind of gathering ourselves to prepare for the next phase of work. So again, this is a fantastic time to join the task force. Recognizing is, if you go back to the list of members, there's actually a growing number of companies from Asia Pacific. So in grudging recognition of that, we've actually changed the timing of 1/3 of our calls to be in the APAC time region. So we share out the pain of the early morning starts and the late night conference calls. So we're making this as accessible as possible to the entire community. We've got a number of work items that we're going through in terms of backlog, things that we didn't have the bandwidth to tackle in the past few months. So we're looking at all of those again. There's a couple listed there that I think were referenced earlier. How do we deal with hybrid? What do we really do in terms of what are the implications for PKI? What's the implication for the automotive industry? What's the implications for IoT? So we're starting to work on these now for the next phase of work. So I think if you want to get involved and actually steer and influence where the attention is focused, now is a good time to do it. We will continue, of course, with the efforts around collaboration, awareness, education, engaging with governments, engaging with the technology community more broadly. And I think as we mentioned here on the left, and I think Laurie mentioned this at the start as well, we need to start making it real now. So it's not enough just to have the standards published. We need to be building proof of concepts. We need to be starting to roll out solutions into 1 or 2 markets and actually get some testing and validation done, and move it from slideware and from standards into concrete implementations. So the member gateway address is there. Come and join us. We're very friendly. The contacts are here. Jolanda is there. Laurie's here. I'm here. Approach any of us, and we'll get you in as part of our club. It'd be fantastic. And I will pause it there and welcome Laurie back to the stage. Thank you.